If you don't know where the water's going, you can't save water. And I think IWMI has done a good job on defining accounting, real water saving, so forth like that. That I think is the most important thing, because it's the start of any research project. To me, that's the most important thing, at least that I learned, and I think it's the starting point for any understanding of a river basin or a system or something like that. You do water balance.
Most important ones, or the most important that I know of, is this basin perspective on irrigation efficiency and water conservation. That has been the one that has changed the thinking of people all over the world about water. IWMI didn't get the original idea. That was developed elsewhere, but we did a lot to flesh that idea out, make it a genuine theory of water resources, and most of all, push it very hard around the world. So the transformation in the world's thinking in that regard is just about 180 degrees. And that's totally documentable fact. You could do a literature review and prove that. And I think IWMI played a big role in that.
Well, it's definitely focusing on the crucial role of water management in whatever you do. And also warning that water is becoming scarce, and that water is a field of competition between agriculture and other sectors. And that you have to sort of be broader than agriculture to be able to sort of secure enough water in the future for agriculture and food.
When IWMI started water irrigation as an irrigation management institute, it was only the management of irrigation water. So we have a very limited perspective. But over the years, we widened that perspective and make it a little bit managing water and land in a basin scale. And that is quite a different perspective, because we are focusing only initially project basis or small parts of the farmland. But now we are talking a lot about interactions with the environment, with wastewater treatment type of thing. So our perspective become quite big. And that kind of sort of linkage with outside our world and outside research institutions become, that was the contribution that we made.
I actually think the single most important achievement of IWMI has been in getting widespread awareness of the fact that water resources can be mapped, they can be measured, they can be predicted, and there are competing uses for water. And realising that it's not just a case of thinking in a simple linear paradigm of irrigation. One of the things that IWMI, especially in its last 10 to 15 years, has done is brought a range of disciplines together. Many water research and development and technical organisations might be full of engineers and hydrologists who will think very, in a linear sense, about solutions being about building infrastructure, about regulating and managing infrastructure. From an early time when multidisciplinary thinking was perhaps not the normal model, IWMI has been able to bring together social scientists, geographers, agricultural scientists, as well as engineers and irrigation specialists. And so in doing so, our achievements in water management are very broad, but the important thing is they're integrated.
Looking back, what's been interesting is the different directions that IWMI has taken, right? I think if we had gone in a straight path down one line, we wouldn't be as far. I think there's been some good adaptation on the way, kind of responding to different needs, but also identifying different opportunities and then digging in and doing research on those opportunities. In my view, we have left a good legacy over that 25-year period on a range of topics. Of course, the core is in water management and agriculture. We've done very good work in IWMI's early days on irrigation, and then kind of went and looked, said, okay, that's not enough. We have to look at irrigation and how it sits in a river basin and competes with other uses of water, the environment, cities and industries, and had done some very good work on river-based analysis, and as well as the global scale. So we have kind of made our mark on the global scene with doing work on water supply and demand and water scarcity and global environmental flows. So that's really brought attention to the Institute. And then now kind of making a mark at looking at groundwater and institutions and wastewater.
IWMI has provided international leadership in quite a wide range and quite a diverse set of water issues, which is in many ways quite surprising because it has always been a relatively small institute in terms of numbers. If you look at a few of them, IWMI sort of has really led the way in terms of trying to push participatory irrigation management systems. It's highlighted for over 10 years now the fact that the world is running out of water, and the water scarcity is going to be one of the critical issues that define the way we meet our challenges to produce enough food in the current century. It's developed simple means of water accounting. It's looked at multiple use water systems and how the poor and particularly women benefit. So there's been a wide range of successes in my view, and I'm very proud to be the current Director General of an organisation with that track record.
It's like Colin's book, you know, we're running out of water. You see, the Green Revolution is two stages. Stage one was surface irrigation. And around about 1990 or earlier in India, we went from surface to groundwater. And we've pretty well irrigated what's going to be irrigated. So now the question is, how do you go the next way? And I think the answer to that, it lies not just in what IWMI is doing, but you have to know what the plant breeders are doing and what other disciplines are doing on the water problem.
But it's what I call the iron law of transpiration. And this is a remarkable fact that I never knew about, that for every kind of crop, there's a direct linear relationship, straight line relationship between yield on this axis and transpiration of water on this axis. And I call it the iron law because for every crop that function is fixed. You can't do anything about it. So that this puts a real constraint on what you can do when you're trying to grow more crops with less water. You can do that by reducing evaporation loss from the surface of the soil and all kinds of tricks. But you finally hit this iron law. And in the present state of physical knowledge, we can't do a thing about that. And it all stops. You can't get any more gain, no more crop per drop. So that is the fundamental challenge for everybody around the world. And it's not something that's IWMI's business in a way, because IWMI isn't into molecular genetics and things that if they can breed crops that can change this relationship.
I guess climate change is a very big issue. But yeah, at the moment, most attention goes to mitigation, warming and energy. But there is a growing concern about adaptation, and World Bank and other organizations already making projections about amounts of money that will have to be provided for adaptation and stability. But I like to see this new focus on climate change more as an add-on to the water management and the water crisis. We don't want two crises, climate crisis and water crisis. These things have to come together. That is very important. And that means that you have to look at very much from a long-term planning perspective, spatial planning. And in spatial planning, integrated water resources management is a very important tool to bring parties together and look for a common future.
One thing is impacts, how we can really create. Water is not as direct as all these breeding institutions. You know, if you have a good breed, you can have visible outcome from their breeding. But water is a sort of a basic foundation for all the activities for agriculture. So it's not visible. And it's very difficult to make it clear how our research impacted on all these poverty reduction and whatever outcomes. So in a way, we should sort of make it clear to the outside world how our research is making changes. And that's, we haven't done, I think, good enough in that perspective. We are sort of saying that we are making a good impact, but we can do the research on that perspective that our research is making this good impacts and changing the livelihood of the poor people or the food security of all these undernourished people.
The biggest challenge will be that the share of water that is available to agriculture will continue to decrease. It's only, I think now, 2.5 years ago that the number of people who live in cities in the world, for the first time in the history of this planet, exceeded the number of people who live in rural areas. And that trend will continue to increase. And yet most of us like to eat. And and of course populations in the world are increasing. We'll be, by 2050, we might be at 8.5, we might be 9.5 billion. So in the next 30, 35 years, there'll be another 3 million mouths to feed. And yet the share of water that will be available to produce those crops, to produce those livestock, to produce those fish, will be a decreasing share. And in many cases, the quality of that water will also be lower quality. What IWMI does, though, of course, is realise that these things have to be addressed not just through engineering solutions, not just through policy solutions, not just through hydrology, not just through agronomy, but through the ability to integrate those disciplines. So their past achievement in being able to bring disciplines together will become even more important. But the key challenge is the fact that we have to feed many more mouths with less water being available to agriculture.
I think we have an incredibly important niche given this livelihood and environmental crisis and the need to get some good evidence. It's a very complicated world, and people are making decisions about what way to go or not. And I think it's an incredibly important role to provide that information as best we can to communicate it and to convince people. And so I think looking over the coming 10 years, I think IWMI is right in the place where we need to be to really make a difference.
I guess in any sort of agency which is dependent on donor funding, the challenge is always to make sure the funds keep coming in the door and that we turn out high quality product from that door. But I think the importance of water is well known, and the funds seem to be coming in quite regularly now. But the other issue, I think, is making sure that in terms of education, we're attracting the best and the brightest young graduates into careers in water, in water science, in water engineering, in the socio-economics of water. And we need to see a reverse in this trend where everyone thinks it was exciting and, if you like, sexy to go into these careers around finance and banking and other sort of very high-profile areas. We're hoping we can attract some of these good, bright young people back into water, which is a very sexy issue in my view.